This weekend, Andy is playing with house money, Ryan is going supernatural again, and we break blocks on the Game Boy. I'm Ryan.
I'm Andy.
And this is Weekend Rental, episode 179. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. Andy, how have you been?
Not too bad. It's been pretty nice out, so it's been good to spend some time outside other than the amount of rain that we've been getting.
Yes.
So tell me about you.
I've been enjoying the outside too. We've been doing some fishing. Fishing has been good, but water levels are low and weirdly rain levels have been high. So yeah, I've been dealing with some torrential downpours in my area. My basement had survived most of them up until this weekend, and it's been a hell of a week. We've been fighting off water coming into the basement. I don't think it's anything to be alarmed about. It's just the sheer volume, but not great. Haven't slept a lot this week. Running fans and dehumidifiers and pulling back carpet in my household, so it's fun.
For our California listeners, basements are things that you dig in the ground under your house.
Yes, and it's a giant mistake.
Yeah, I don't know. You were maybe right in not building them out there, but
yeah, it's been interesting. I'm pretty beat, but nothing was damaged. We got ahead of it. It's it's just kind of been a thing. It happens every once in a while. So the joys of home ownership. I was gonna say, speaking of my home, for anyone who's listened to the podcast for a while now, we used to have this guy on here called Biff. He was like our third man, or Nate, maybe you know him as. He texted me out of the blue and came over and hung out in the garage arcade, and it was all right. Like, it's kind of like seeing like a ghost of like friends past or whatever. It just comes out of the blue, and we played some skee ball, little Double Dragon on the old Genesis, some cave shooters on my hacked PlayStation Classic, and then for no reason at all other than it was on TV, we started watching the Police Academy movies.
Oh wow, yeah.
Started, so it was fun. It was one of the handful of occasions which I have talked to that man in person since podcast again or whatever. No bad or ill will. It's just like when that dude was gone, he was gone. So.
Yeah, it was like a good year before I talked to him at MGC, I think.
Yeah, so it was all right.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, we'll see if that continues or not. Either way, it was fun to catch up. So, what have you been up to gaming wise or family wise since the last time we recorded?
Well, I added something to my garage arcade too.
Oh, do tell.
So my parents live with me. My dad needs some extra help with his health at his age.
When you say live with me, you live on a McMansion out in the Midwest, and they have a separate household.
It's not a match.
So don't downplay. No. But you're thinking like with the way you describe it, people are thinking like we live in a 3-bedroom apartment with 10 of us. But like you have this amazing compound with like 4 houses on it. So
there's a small apartment on the other side of our garage that they live in. Yes,
he's downplaying it, everybody. He's downplaying it.
Anyway, he needs some extra health. He's had problems with his legs or whatever, right? And like many people his age are hopelessly addicted to gambling and going to the casino.
Yeah. You want to spend that retirement fund somewhere, right?
Right. I don't expect anything from from that.
Well, with your large Catholic family, the dividends are just divided,
Right. There's not much left anyway in the first place, so you may as well You might as well gamble. He's maybe
Literally.
right in doing that. Yep. Um, but also he can't go there every day. It's like 2 hours away from here, so and which is a good thing because that would be a problem if it was right next door. But in order to maybe try to get him to maybe exercise more and get more physical therapy out of his leg, I've added a PC out in the shed exclusively for slot machine emulation, which is
A phrase
that's
no
where I
one's
am in my
ever
life
said
right now.
ever.
Right,
Yes.
that's where I'm at now. um, I bought a touchscreen monitor for this thing. So yeah, it's set up where older person who knows nothing about computers can easily recognize that, oh, this is the slot machine I see at the thing.
Right.
But what's crazy about it is that they actually make these. The ones that are currently in casinos, they're basically just a front end. There's nothing actually happening in the machine itself.
Sure.
It's just going to a server that's picking random numbers to see if you win or not, right? And it's just displaying the outcome. So there's not really any way you can emulate that. But they do license out to these other companies that make PC games, versions of them, which are straight up like fake money. There's no stakes on the line really. So it's kind of weird. I there's a lot of them you can do online, but I didn't want to do any of those because obviously there are real money
it goes
things.
down the rabbit hole of real money, right? I was gonna say, don't do that.
Right. So I tried to find something that's kind of self-contained, does not reach the internet, and surprisingly, they make them. But they are. I tell you what, the thrill is gone once you you can just hit max bet every time.
So it has not caught on.
He hasn't tried it yet.
What?
No, we haven't. I haven't brought it up yet. I haven't shown him it yet.
So you're just preparing.
Right. I kind of want to get the kind of sense the water of everybody else to make sure that this isn't going to exacerbate the problem, like
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Well, if you're really gonna make it feel like a slam dunk, you can never get like the soda machine next to it. You never get like the bumper rail, like that leather stool with the backrest.
Oh yeah,
the gold bar to put his feet up on.
A smoke machine pointing right at you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you've like pulled that off and like programmed it and everything, but I'm curious. I am like that's the ultimate thing. Like when we were talking about this before, is like, will it work if there's no monetary like risk? Like, is the high gone, right?
Right. Yeah. For me, it is because it's just like, well, it's just nothing, right? But I don't know. Maybe it is a replacement. I don't have the necessarily drive that he does to go to the casino all the time. So
you're gonna like
I don't need to have a replacement.
Yeah, you're gonna vet this past your siblings and see like, should this be a thing or not first? Is that
right? Yeah.
That's probably wise.
Is this going to make it? Is this going to make it worse?
Right. You don't want to double down on dad's gambling addiction.
Right.
Makes sense.
I hit the jackpot out in the garage. We need to get to the casino today.
I'm on a hot streak. We're gonna go. Yeah. Yeah, that's not good. Especially around where we live, where they're all like tribal run. He'd end up in like Red Lake, with a mask over his head. Where's the money?
No idea where.
Where's the money? Yeah, that's not good. That's interesting though that like that's available and you can just like side load it onto devices. And
right. Yeah.
You would think like the risk would be so great in exploiting the software that they wouldn't want that in public hands, but
I think it's so
modify it, right?
These are like these are developed specifically just for this.
Okay.
For PC.
Okay.
So they're a separate thing altogether.
Than the casinos.
There's some game developer that's licensing, taking the license and making the game. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. I had no idea that whole industry existed, but
now you know. You're two steps away from a garage casino. You get a craps table. You know, you get some video poker or video Jack Black. You'll be all set.
Yep. I was even looking on, like, in MAME, there's a whole bunch of weird gambling stuff that you can get, and they're all like Australian, like, fruit machines, they're called. I have no idea what. I wasn't going to go down that rabbit hole because that seemed like a whole other thing to get into. But
yeah, I'm sure at some point you're on somebody's radar too. Like you're gonna have Caesar's Palace, like,
right?
And...
Yeah,
interesting. Well, since we're talking about garage arcades, I was going to bring up. I don't know if you saw the news, but that Evercade Alpha got announced, which is basically like a tabletop barcade style arcade machine that runs on Evercade platforms. Basically, Evercade. If anyone who's not familiar, Evercade's been around for, I don't know, 5 years or so. They started out as like we're introducing a new retro handheld that's cartridge based. Then they did a home console version. They did the pocket version, a revision, and the second revision to make it cheaper. And now they have this like arcade thing, and I was a doubter, right? Like I was like, Evercade is like niche. It's not going to work. It was UK based. It'll falter, and they've been successful. I would argue outside of maybe this recent rash of like 3 iterations of hardware within 9 months. But this thing's kind of interesting because there's 2 versions. It's $250, and there's a Mega Man themed one, and a Street Fighter themed one. It's all Capcom licensed games. Each one has like 6 games built in, but then what's neat is the cabinet has like 2, like kind of where the coin slots would be, like 2 cartridge bays where you can put the Evercade cartridges you have, play them. It's cool in the sense that like if you're in that ecosystem, it makes sense. I have an Evercade. I think it's really neat. I think I've always talked about it being like my bedroom console. Like it's the thing you have laying next to you in the bedroom, and like if you want to just like crank out a few minutes of like retro gameplay, that's what it's for. Where this is kind of like, if you're there, it makes sense to buy this. If you're a new customer, I don't think this makes sense. But the 2 cartridge slots, a lot of these things are like old console and arcade hardware based. So I think this is a good fit. What I don't like is like the proportions of the unit only allow for like 1 arcade setup. There's only 1 joystick, 1 button set. There's USBs to plug external controllers into, so you could do a multiplayer. But that to me seems a little short-sighted. And they're coming in at like $250 US for pre-order. You know what I mean? Or like just under that. Yeah, I don't know.
What's the regular console, like 150 or so?
Yeah, so it used to be. So you can get the like, I forget what the little pocket Gameboy shaped one is. That's only $70. That comes with either a Taito or a Capcom version of ROMs built in. More of them from the get-go. And then they are doing, I bought the EXP. That was $129 with a bunch of games built in. But now they're doing a revision of the EXP, which I forget even what the abbreviation on that one's called. But basically all the features, $100. So you've got like the cheap, you've got the premier, and then you've got the extravagant, and limited use case in my perspective for the alpha. I don't know. And they just announced like the Giga carts. So they're going to have these Giga carts coming out for the Evercade, which will hold enough storage to now have PlayStation. There's been other cases of 3D games, 64 or PlayStation, that sort of stuff. But like now you'll be able to get like full 3D, early 3D games. And it's like, Well, that's cool, but then you're also gonna throw out this new console that is a joystick and like 6 arcade buttons. Like that's not gonna
Yeah.
work for everything, right?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. That. Yeah. Once you get into that, your shoulder buttons and stuff, that's not going to work on a arcade. Um. Hmm. They've never been like okay. They've never separated like generations or anything. Like every cart works on every system, right?
Well, right, with the exception of when they released the VS, which was the home console thing, they only secured certain rights through Namco for portable distribution.
Oh, okay.
So there were like 2 or 3 cartridges that were not compatible with that, but I think they've kind of gotten around that with this because it's technically like a self-contained unit. You can move it.
Mm-hmm.
So they say that this is fully compatible, which I completely believe. I don't know. I don't need this. I do really like the Evercade, and I like what I've bought for it, and I've been happy with what I've invested. I don't play it that often. I think it is a very nice piece of inexpensive retro hardware that does a good job of like filling that physical game niche. And because I'm invested, I will probably pre-order one of these. And and I only say that because I have a garage arcade. If I didn't already have like this is a new addition to my garage arcade, I probably wouldn't care. Because there's a million ways to do this cheaper. But I don't know. I don't think this lines up with their traditional business model. I think this is like hyper specific even within what they are doing.
Yeah.
My take on it.
Huh. Yeah, that seems like a almost too far because I think there's probably some crossover from the people that own those and then also having arcade one-ups.
Right.
Because that seems like the market that they're going for. But boy.
Well, and that's the thing is like I'd almost be more offended by the price, except Arcade One Up is so exorbitantly priced that it's like that's actually pretty reasonable. Like you're gonna let me expand my game collection. Let's not forget the fact that, and I don't want to tout this, but there is a company making a flash card for this console already. So like this is like infinitely hackable. And again, like that's a stupid thing for me to say because you could spend $150, a little bit of elbow grease and a Raspberry Pi later, and you'd be there anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're a fan and you are probably you probably have nostalgia for arcade stuff, this fits. So I'll probably grab one. I have not done it yet, but I can't see a case in which I don't. So
yeah. Did I tell you my idea that so my dad used to be a radio DJ, right?
yeah.
And then he had a mobile DJ set up too. And he had this table specifically for this that you would take to all these places. And it would have, 2 inset. It was a long table, probably like a 6-foot table. And then on 2 sides, you would have insets for your players, right? And then a center console for your mixer or whatever that kind of tilted up and showed you. So he gave me that, and what my idea is to put arcade controls on both sides, and then like a monitor in the middle, but also like a HDMI that you could hook up to, a screen farther away in front. Yeah. So I think that's what I'm gonna do with that thing.
And what would you call this?
Oh boy.
VJ.
The VJ
versus.
I think MTV has that trademark.
No, they're dead. Trust me. Unless you want to watch reruns of like Viva La Bam, they are gone. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like this. Bring it to county fairs. Set it up on street fairs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad.
I was like the idea of like those arcade games that had like the big podium in front. I thought those were always like cool. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Like all those Gauntlet games used to be like that, and
Yeah. No, I get it. It's a vibe. That could be. I mean,
yeah.
that could be like a kid's birthday thing, right? Especially if you had like a
Oh yeah.
projector and like if you got a like you get the HDMI out, then you could do like a pop up gazebo of sorts. Have it black walled on all sides. Projector throws it. So short throw projectors now. Like you can literally set up alone and just like tosses it up. You're not wrong. That's a good idea.
That sounds ambitious, though.
Only if you exclusively let kids play Street Fighter 2 for the TurboGrafx.
Yeah, that's the only machine I have.
Yeah, that's all you have.
Yep.
Kids got to grow up sometime.
Yep. We'll have to have like bead doors on that gazebo.
So, before I had a coughing fit, you saw the state of play. I did not.
And did not change my mind on
this
if
generation.
I need a PlayStation 5 or not.
Yeah. I read the Cliff Notes and had similar thoughts. I think the thing I got most excited about was a new Astros Playroom game. It's like, that seems neat.
That was their showstopper at the end, which
for a franchise based on this self-indulgent nostalgia, like that's so funny that's like, hey, we got more.
Right. It's kind of like in the same thing of like Little Big Planet was to me. Even that, right. But even Little Big Planet had more going on in it, and they kind of kicked those to the curb. Those were always like the like the third degree thing that they had coming out.
Yeah.
So I think we're in trouble if like this is like their big game that they're showing off for the year.
I'm surprised they didn't announce like a sequel to Mod Nation Racers while they were at it.
Yeah.
We got this figured out, everybody. Games that nobody wants.
Yep.
Yeah,
You don't even create the tracks. AI does. You just drive on these tracks that are generated.
It plays it for you. Yeah, I was reading through that like hit list and I was like, there's why? And then like a week later, you got Keeley coming out like Summer Games Fest. Don't expect anything substantial at all or exciting. It's like, well, maybe just don't have Summer Games Fest if we can't.
What the hell is going on with gaming?
People are going bankrupt and jobless is seemingly the answer. I did hop on the PS5 with my son a little bit tonight because my kids are this is first week of full summer vacation. So my son just would not shut the fuck up about, Dad, can I have this game? Dad, can I have this game? And I was just like, for 3 days. And I was like, what is the game you want? And it was Who's Your Daddy? Which is like a $10 sandbox abomination game, you know, where it's like a baby and a dad running around the house. Baby tries to
I've seen this thing.
Yeah.
My kids watch this. Oh, yeah.
Yes, and I know that's where it came from, like a TikTok thing or whatever, or shorts. So he asked me to like come in and play with him tonight. And I was like, okay. We played 2 rounds. I think we both understand what this game has to offer. Can we do something else? And I bought him a like MXX like motocross game on the $5 clearance at Walmart a while back. We put that in and played it, like super ultra realistic like motocross game. But I have to say, I haven't played the PS5 like essentially at all. That haptic feedback, super cool and exhausting at the same time. Like it is like it is super tactile to like pull a trigger and have it feel like you're actually pulling like a throttle on a mountain bike or a motocross bike. But at the same time, like you do that for like 10 minutes and you're like, can I just disable this? Like I am not actually riding a bike. I just want to play a video game and I don't need my finger fatigue to be this hard. It's I don't know. It's wild. Like it was like an eye opener. Like this is amazing, and I want to turn it off now. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of
Yeah.
like how some of those other Sony controller improvements have been with like I think back to like the PS4 and that in controller sensor. Like there were games like Shadowfall that were like, oh, it's so cool, it's so neat, and like, all right, how do I disable it? You know what I mean? My kid's trying to sleep, and I don't know.
Well, it's cool anyway that they like have it in there because a lot of these Sony gimmicks,
Yeah.
especially like after a while, they just went away. Like
Yeah. I am curious. Like, I haven't played like a Call of Duty or anything on there. Like, I wonder if there's like haptic, like trigger kickback or
yeah,
just like capacitive resistance. But I noticed it immediately and was like really impressed with how well it felt. It's almost like that
Yep.
HD Rumble bullshit that everyone wanted us to believe with the Switch that just never did a damn thing.
They never did anything with it. Yeah, that is cool. But like you said, I mean, you don't want to feel like you've been holding the throttle down.
Right. I'm not in the world of immersion when I'm playing my PlayStation 5. You know what I mean? I could see, like, I don't know if they integrated that into the PSVR 2. If you're immersed in that and the triggers do that, that's fucking awesome. But when I'm sitting on a stool in my son's bedroom, I don't need to feel that forever. Like, it was neat once.
Yep. So. I don't think anything's happening in a PSVR 2 anymore. So.
Well, I don't know. They said that you can now connect it somehow to your PC and photo view.
Oh yeah, play Steam games now, which to me that seems like a last resort to like, okay, we need to sell these things. What can we do without developing new things?
Yeah, what do you think units sold is on the VR2?
Oh boy.
Because VR1 was like 500,000, right? Like,
yeah, it's.
Do you think it's broke 100,000?
I bet not.
Because they did the typical Sony thing where they announced it and then immediately fucking flushed it because they're just dipshits.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
There was one game in this state of play, I think, for it, which was surprising
for the one person watching who's interested.
Yeah.
I don't understand the all in on the sequel when you had a moderately well supported first iteration that you let die. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I was a big fan of it. We still play it probably once every 2 weeks. Somebody's
but you
playing
don't have
it.
the Quest yet, right?
No.
If you had the Quest,
that's a totally different thing then. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle there where Quest 2 is cheap, but then you're like, oh, are they just going to abandon it pretty soon? And then,
I hope not.
Just get the 3. But
well, speaking of forgettable investments, have you checked out YouTube Playables at all?
I have not. I saw you listed this, and then I had no idea what this was. I checked it out, and I'm like, okay, this is what this is, and then I closed the tab immediately.
So for anyone who uses YouTube on their phone, if you go to like the generic home feed, you can scroll down and eventually, like shorts, you will come across a section that's just YouTube Playables, and it is a bunch of games that you do not need to download that will play in the cloud. I'm air quoting for anyone who can't. I don't know why I'm air quoting. It's a podcast. You can't see it. It's a bunch of games from like 12 years ago or more that are now available to play within YouTube.
They look like the games that are on the ads that you have to you watch on on other ads to get rewards.
I feel like they really shelled out for Cut Rope because that's about the only game that anyone from like 2006 would recognize.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are really outdated. And I've been diving into them on occasion out of boredom because I'll be sitting somewhere. But functionality is spotty at best. It's seldom in a 10-minute play session that the game does not crash on me through the cloud, and I have to reset, come back to restart the level that I was on. It does a surprisingly surprisingly good job of like remembering your progress. I don't know how that works. It's got to be by your profile, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I didn't know it was coming. I had heard nothing about it. It is a perfectly fine. I don't want to blow up my phone with spyware alternative. If you're sitting in a barber shop waiting to be the next guy up, I would never pin my hat on like this is my gaming platform. But you know, at the
No,
same time, I don't know what that
Google
gets
has a
them.
solution for that.
Right. I just at the same time, it's like I don't know what this gets them because it doesn't. When you launch a game, when you play a game, when you leave a game, it does not hit you with ads. So, what is the revenue ad for YouTube other than and Google other than like total watch time per account or like within your ecosystem? But like, are they using that to then sell to advertisers? Because seemingly this is a loss leader as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Does it integrate with video at all? Like, can you watch a video and play this in the corner, or you
Not that
know,
I've
or
seen. No,
picture
this is
in
like
picture, anything like that?
this is it. Yeah.
It's just
You
straight
just
up like
launch to
we're
a game.
adding flash games.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it's like Newgrounds for Sweat or for YouTube. Yeah.
Wow.
I've had a lot of fun with whatever shooter is bundled in with it. I forget the name of it because it's so generic. My problem with it is that shooter crashes usually 3 times for every level I'm trying to beat. So I either A, accomplish that level and then I quit because I've been pissed off, or I never get to beat that level because the game keeps crashing and I shut it off. So,
Huh.
not great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take it for free, but I don't understand what the
Sure.
point is, and I don't know what YouTube
Yeah,
is
I
trying to
don't.
do. You know?
There would probably be some cool ways that you could integrate with the video platform of some way. I mean, Twitch does a lot of that already.
Right.
Um,
Have
but
a YouTube live
yeah.
or like streamer guy like talking about the game in the corner and
Mm-hmm.
recommendations based off on what you click, but they don't even do any of that seemingly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's crazy. It must. Yeah. Yeah, I had not heard of this.
It is. I would say its best application is a time waster for kids. Like I don't know what we did. We went somewhere. And my son was like being an annoying turd, and I was like, "Here, play this game." And I handed him like cut roll. Did it, you know, like to me, that's the ultimate use at this point. Maybe they have grander schemes, but I don't know.
Was Who's Your Daddy on there?
Sadly, no. Yeah. Magic. What have you been doing with Magic?
Oh. I don't even know if I want to bring this up. This is embarrassing.
Oh, then you have to bring it up.
I played Magic the Gathering.
The card game.
Yeah. The card game.
Did your virginity grow back?
I get to keep the kids at least.
Well, they're not yours. We know that at this point.
No, we were in Walmart and they were cheap. They had a cheap deck or something in there. And my cousin or my nephew was talking about how good it's like his favorite thing. He loves to play it. Sure. You know, he goes to all the things. And my oldest son is kind of getting to that age where he doesn't like the Pokemon stuff anymore because it's not as, the strategy isn't as deep, you know?
Right.
And I think we talked about, he got into Yu-Gi-Oh! Which that's a whole, I can't keep up with that. There's too much going on in that game. It's too much reading and too much bullshit. So I bought this deck and then we played, and yeah, then we put it on the online version and we've been playing it on there now.
Okay.
It's not bad, but I don't think I'll be going to events and buying all the new cards or anything like that. But the bare bones game of it, it's pretty good. I mean, I used to play Hearthstone a lot when that first launched, and that I'm seeing that Hearthstone kind of just ripped off Magic the Gathering for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, Magic has that like hardcore dedicated following for 20 plus years now, so
Yeah.
it would surprise me if there's not a deep hook in there. So
Right. Yeah. The point is just to have fun with it. I think that's where I'm trying to stay, because once you get into like trying to win stuff and going to events and stuff, that's just a money sink,
yeah.
and they got you by the balls right where they want you.
God, you're like one step away from us having to like build out like a once monthly like D&D game on like a giant 20-foot table with your families. So.
Well, so to balance the nerd spectrum, I did open up a sports betting account. So
I hope you didn't bet on the Timberwolves.
no, I'm bittersweet that the basketball season is over now. So it doesn't take up as much of my time, but sad how it went. But yeah, sports betting is not completely legal here yet, but they have like the pick'em things where it's just like, is he gonna get a home run? Yes or no? You know,
I love those
and then you bet
over-under
on that.
things. Right.
Yeah, yep. So I've been doing that, just $1, just to see, just for fun, having something on the. What I usually do is I bet on the team that I'm cheering against, or I bet that they're going to do well.
Sure.
So even if the team that I'm rooting for loses, at least I'm probably going to be in the money.
Well, and if you're a Minnesota
Right.
sports fan, that's also a safe
Right,
bet.
right.
So.
Never bet on Minnesota.
In fact, like it's good juju to bet against your state teams if you're a sports fan on the Minnesota side, because like if you root for them, it's only disappointment, you know.
Right. Yeah, the Minnesota sports gods, they don't know what to do, because they're like, we want these guys to feel bad, but either they're going to win money or their team's going to win, and we don't know what to do.
Right.
I got them.
I like it. So are you going to continue with Magic, or you guys like think you got it figured out? Like your son gets really into it, or is this like a new every weekend thing for the fam?
Yeah, he enjoys more the video game one version of it, which I think I have a hard time with that too, because then if you want to get anywhere, if you want to do anything in that, it's like, well, here's your free cards, but once you play this a million times, you're gonna want to buy. And I just have a hard time with like buying digital cards. I don't know.
Yeah, hard time buying digital anything these days.
Right.
I just watched a whole video before we started on like DRM and like the whole games for like Windows Live, and like how all of those are just paperweights with no fucking no non-pirated solution to continue to play them. Like Fable 3 for Windows essentially being irredeemably fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's crazy.
The world we live in.
Yeah. It'd probably be pretty soon, because I think the Xbox is about to integrate a lot more with PC, I think, and then here we are again to that.
I'm fine with integration as long as these companies like figure out, like, connected universe is great. Just have a connected solution. You know what I mean? Like, don't look at Windows 10 or Windows 11 as like the forever platform. Like, they need to build in stopgaps for your digital variant can be accessed in the future. Like, it's an impossible ask. You know what I mean?
It is. I mean, Steam does a good job with that. They're not going to tell you that your games are going to work on your computer, but they'll serve up the files if you want them,
Right. Yeah, but then Steam, at the same time, it's like how many older games do you put up that just like will not like load? That's just
Yeah.
so fucked. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I had a couple random topics to get through on, but I'm just going to touch on one more before we get to staff picks, and that is Supernatural. The television series reboot seems to be all but confirmed. Walker Texas Ranger got canceled, which had one of the main. I'm not going to get into names because people who aren't accustomed to that show, like it doesn't matter. He was one of the main stars. There has been talks from the original writer who did the first 5 seasons. That was his run, his story run. The creator, show creator, writer. He has expressed interest that if the circumstances were correct, he would come back.
Oh wow.
So, and he's also been working on The Boys, which the other member
Mm-hmm.
of the other co-headliner of Supernatural is part of. And I watched a recent Q&A from like a Comic-Con or something like that, where the former Walker Texas Ranger star and his wife, who was also a demon in the show, they were up there on stage, and it was talked about, and it was directly asked, like, what is the status of the reboot? What is your envisioning of like how that story would go? And he went on to clarify he was recently fired, like within the month. Walker did not get renewed for season 4 or 5. I think he had 4 seasons. He didn't get renewed, and he said, as of yet, it is not written. The reboot. He's hoping it's being written soon, and he laid out what he envisioned for a series reboot, which I thought was genius and 100% plausible with that show. And he said, I would envision Sam and Dean wake up back on Earth with zero recollection as to how they got there. And the story begins with finding out why. And it was like, fuck yeah. Like, of course that's it. Like, yes. I don't care the why. I hope it's not a continued story arc. Like, just them kicking it back off into like 2 dudes fighting evil for the sake of good. I want more of that. You know what I mean?
Yep. I'm kind of surprised that it wouldn't. I would have bet that they would be taking a back seat. They would be more supporting characters. But if they are still like have nothing else to do, why not, right?
And I think it's what the fandom wants, and then like,
yeah,
given the failed prequel, which I think was largely the pandemic, I didn't love it. It had a lot of forced modern media standard requirements pushed into it, which were fine. It wasn't a detriment to the story, but like I think getting those guys back on screen would do a lot, and then maybe maybe you do continue a lineage from there. We've been doing a reboot run because my son has been very into watching that, so we're on to season like 3, I think, in the house. And like you really get such an appreciation after you've like gone through the long story arc seasons that began after the mid run of that series, where like those first 5 seasons were just great, where it was just like each a self-contained story, like built a character. It was super. I mean, it's the same problem that X-Files had, right? Like at some point it got too convoluted for its own good.
Right.
So it's been super nice watching those.
Those first seasons are, like you said, they're nice because they wrap up, they talk to the person that they help save and get in the car and they go down the road with a classic rock song, and that's the ending of every single episode.
Yeah, I watched the first introduction of the not then named Ghost Facers. We watched the one with like the pagan scarecrow who's a pagan god, and like the town's just sacrificing.
Yeah.
It's like these are great. Like it's so good, and like you learn to like appreciate those in retrospect because like it's just so exhausting when you get into like the angel and demon wars, and like don't get me wrong, there's some great highs and some like bad lows in there, but like that first half or third of that run of the show was so good. So I hope I want more. I hope if they bring it back, I hope they take a breather and at least let the reboot be that for a couple of seasons before they need to before they feel the need to like interweave shit, because I didn't hate that stuff, but I also didn't like it as much as the original purity,
Right. Yeah, that's tough because there's so many reoccurring characters in there now that I think could really bog it down if you really like rebooted it and then had all those people there again.
Yeah.
Um,
If
simplified might be better.
if they reboot it, I hope they at least bring Crowley back. Crowley was like one of my
Sure. Yeah.
favorite like good bad characters.
Yeah.
His
Yeah. We
mom.
yes. We kind of fell off of that. We need to get back on there, but
Oh
I
yeah.
think we were at 12 or 13, season 12 or 13 or so.
Yeah, so you're
So we're
within
getting
like
there.
3, yeah. It's when you do get to the end of it, just keep in mind that that finale was like severely weakened by the pandemic. Like they made the best of what they thought they could, but like
Yeah.
it wasn't like the all encompassing like kumbaya it should have been. It was fine. But I think that's maybe why the reason like I'm more excited about a possible reboot because like I don't think that got. I know they wanted it to be different, but like it definitely did not get like the ending it deserved. I mean, it's not
Mm.
Seinfeld levels of bad, but it's not. It's not
Well, it's got to be
Michael.
hard because every single season it felt like they were like, are we coming back? You know, are we going to make another one? So that's got to be exhausting. I mean, they were talking about canceling that thing after like what, season 7?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And it just kept going, you know?
it continued to be like just the most popular thing, right? Like I think there was
Yeah.
like that. I want to say there was like that mid-run cancellation worry because like both of them had popped off so much. Like both of the main actors had gone to like
Mm.
major motion picture careers, and like it seemed like maybe
Yeah.
they'd outgrown it, but then it kind of just fell back in, and because both of their My Bloody Valentine 3D and the Friday the 13th reboot both did well but failed I think to set the world on fire, and I think that's kind of when
Mm.
those two guys were like let's just settle back into like what we know we excel at, and then
Yeah.
they kind
Yeah.
of arced out that run. But yeah, yeah, it's wild. I mean, what do you do with a show that was supposed to end after 5 seasons that ran for 15? You know?
And I mean, they've exhausted a lot of different stories. Like, what, there's not, it's hard to come up with a fresh angle, I think.
Well, that was yeah. My son, so we're on like between season 2 and 3, and he's like, "Do they die?" I was like, "Many times. They both go to hell. They both go to heaven. They both come back. Like it's a thing." So like, I'm not spoiling the ending at all for him, but he's just like, "Really?" I was like, "Yes." It gets very complicated. Stupidly, nonsensically complicated.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into staff picks. I'm gonna let you go with yours
Yeah.
first.
I want to do mine quick because I think we'll talk about yours for a while. My son is just getting to that age where like stand-up comedy is like funny, you know, like once
Right.
you start realizing like the art of it and like the how hilarious it can be. So I showed him vintage at this point, Mitch Hedberg, all his great one-liners and his comedy specials, and man, the guy died way too young. I can't just. It's sad to think about all the great
Yeah.
like stuff we missed out on because
Well, in Home State Hero, like he was a Minneapolis boy, so
right, yeah, yeah, he had a different way of looking at things, and
and a horrible heroin addiction for anyone who doesn't know.
yeah,
So,
yeah, um, and that it definitely plays part of the character. Like you can
sure.
tell. I it's hard to know if he wasn't an addict. Would he have the same presence and cadence and everything to his jokes? You know, I don't know. That's tough to answer, but it
Yeah.
is what it was, and
I don't know if you ever like saw the behind the scenes on like his Comedy Central presents, where if you watch that, you know, that last half of that um stand up was him sitting down, you know, on the steps just like talking to people. Like that wasn't because he thought it was chill. Like that was literally because he'd spent 2 hours in that room with nobody laughing or buying into it. So they said like he had just given up. Like he just had folded.
Really?
He
Wow.
sat down. Like the audience wasn't into it. And then like it started clicking, but like they really had to heavily edit that because like he just couldn't get a crowd into his jokes.
Right. Yeah, and there is some that I mean, I think that's part of the charm because he'll throw ones in there that he knows he bombs at that make no sense at
Right.
all, but they're funny because they're surrounded by all the other stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
And he's very much
I
like a
I
joke comedian, not a storyteller comedian. He is like rapid
oh yeah.
fire, one drug addicted random thought to another. And like,
Yes.
yeah, like you said, like sometimes it's fire, sometimes like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of them where like I don't even know how you got to that, how you even thought about that in the first place. But here we are and it's hilarious.
My favorite bit of him is always like that. Like, I went into the donut shop and I bought a donut. And they said it's 45 cents. And I handed them $1 and they gave me a receipt. We do not need to bring ink and paper into this. And like just that delivery is so dumb, but it's so funny. It's like,
Yeah.
God, he's
Yeah,
good.
the delivery is definitely one of the main points of that. Like, if he was not like that, I don't think any of these land
Yeah.
exactly the way he does.
Yeah, he looks like the stoner he depicts, and it's perfect.
Yeah,
And it is sad
there
because
was
like
one
he
that I
was what, like mid 30s when he died?
right, and it's tough to know because I don't know if he wouldn't have been a mainstream. I don't know. I don't think he would ever like have been able to make it.
I don't know.
Not the with the way
Yeah. Yeah.
he was, but
He comes off to me like a Dave Attell, where like he's every comics comic, and like Norm Macdonald
yeah,
to a large extent, but like those guys are all revered. Like Norm was like obviously public facing, and but like Dave Attell, like Mitch Hedberg, like those guys were never like the guy, but everyone respected the fuck out of him, you know?
yep, yep, yeah, exactly, yeah. And then beyond that, that got me on the kick of just watching other stuff too because it's stand-up comedy is good. I'm sure you've seen this, but the Dr. Phil, Adam Ray doing Dr. Phil.
I don't know if I've seen it. Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh
yes,
man,
yes, yes, yes. I've seen
yeah,
it.
yeah. He
So
dresses up as
good.
Dr. Phil. It's quite amazing. I can't believe Dr. Phil is allowing this to happen because it's
It
he's
does seem
putting
like
on
a
shows like
defamation
he's
lawsuit,
selling.
right?
Yeah, he's selling out shows as Dr. Phil live. And yeah, it's pretty good. If you haven't seen any of that, I would recommend that too. But
Yeah. Well, if your son's getting into that stuff, you should start watching just YouTube dry bar comedy because it's all like comedians with clean jokes. Like there's no like horrible
sure,
shit. I just knocked my phone down.
yeah, I have seen that channel in the past. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. It's nice
Um,
to know they're not going to get anything like horribly explicit, you know. So
right.
in the
Mitch
world of
Hedberg kind of
comedy.
goes some places too, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not too bad.
Right. Yeah, he's great. I always loved Mitch Hedberg. He was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, I'll go into mine. You said you watched it too. I've been after this film forever. It was in theaters. We didn't go. Critically acclaimed. Everyone loved it. That is Godzilla Minus Zero. It's out of the original studio that has been producing kaiju films and Godzilla films since their inception. And this was produced in Japan. It came out right alongside like all these big budget Hollywood Godzilla versus Kong or whatever the fuck they are movies, Michael Bay explosion movies. And this is, I guess, it's not a reboot, maybe a retelling of the origin story of Godzilla. As far as I could tell, it wasn't a guy in a suit; it was all CG. which
Yeah.
probably was the first time ever that they've done that studio. I'd heard a lot of good stuff about it, and when I read an article that like it was finally coming outside of Japan on Amazon and possibly physical, I got excited because I was like, well, I've been dying to see this. And then they were like, well, surprise, it also dropped on Netflix the same day. And I was like, all right, I can do it. Like, let's watch. So we finished up our Svengoolie. We were out camping, fishing, having fun all weekend. So we caught up on Svengoolie naturally, The Tickler, with Vincent Price. Great movie. Also watched that. But then after The Tickler, it's not a dildo movie, although it kind of is. Google it. We watched this movie, and I was in love with it. Like I loved the production. I loved. I didn't love the overdub. I didn't think the dub was good. I thought some of the English dub was too hammy for what they clearly had tried to make like a pretty straight action movie featuring Godzilla. But yeah, super cool. So it kind of opens with a pilot landing on a runway, which you realize like he's a failed kamikaze pilot who got nerves. Everyone who's around him is like giving him shit for it and like calling him out on it, and like basically broken hero from then on out. So once Godzilla comes into the picture, he feels like it's his duty to like surrender his life in pursuit of taking down Godzilla once he becomes the formidable threat. He's also a horrible human being who treats a woman who rescued a child terribly, talks down to both of them, and reminds the child infinitely that he's not his father or her father. Which I don't know if maybe in Japanese culture
that's going to be a culture thing, right?
Yeah, it's a little rough though. But even in the movie, they're like, "Wow, you're an asshole, dude," you know. But and then it's like from there on out, it's kind of just a retelling of Godzilla with way better production outside of the main character, really likable and enjoyable cast. And kind of like this, I think what struck me is I've always gotten the impression, and I could be wrong. I mean, I'm landlocked in the middle of the United States, but I've always gotten the impression that Japan did not lean into its nuclear issues or struggles with World War II, and this film coming out of Japan strongly ties into that, and also anti wanting involvement in what was World War II in the film, or at least in the English dub. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I from what I've kind of understood, that like Godzilla was kind of born as a metaphor of Hiroshima, nuclear warfare.
Right.
Yeah, of it's an unstoppable monster that destroys, But yeah, I was surprised that they had such heavy themes of like what it was to be a kamikaze and what that meant and what that looked like years after the war, because it changed in people's mind. And what the war meant to people when it was going on and just a few years after it. Where, shortly after it, everybody just said, yeah, it was worthless. Why did we do that?
Yeah, it was very much like a post World War II piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I was blown away by this movie. It was, I think, you compare this to the other Godzilla movies that are American made now, and it's just like the new ones have more stuff going on and bigger things, bigger fights and all this stuff. But I want this.
But they lost their humanity, right? Like we were just like in this Hollywood things go boom thing over here, especially after the Marvel craze, and like this managed to do both, right? Like it wasn't over the top, but there was still like a human element to everything.
Yeah, if anything, Godzilla was just there. He was just the background. He was just there to terrorize. It wasn't it could have been anything. It could have been the war. It's basically a war movie, But yeah, like to have a Godzilla movie and actually care about the characters and not want them to be like, well, who cares? Godzilla, kill him. Who knows?
Yeah. And it had like the most stereotypical like U.S. Hollywood random happy ending that like I didn't expect out
Yeah.
of that film. And maybe it's because it was a Japanese film. But yeah, I thought it was great. My only complaint was, everybody knows that like Godzilla kind of goes like Super Saiyan. I hated the way they portrayed him like powering up, where it was like his like spine was like chunk chunk chunk. He was like some robot from you know some other movie. I don't know that I
Yeah.
didn't, and that's a minor complaint. Like it was whatever. They made an acidic choice. It built tension. I just didn't like in an organic organism. I guess who was a giant nuclear dinosaur. Maybe it doesn't matter, but it seemed weird.
Yeah. I think that's the real strong suit of this is they drag on the action and the chases or whatever from Godzilla, where it ramps up the tension way higher than
Yeah.
any of the other Godzilla movies that I've seen. To a point where I think U.S. studios should probably take notice on how to edit and
Yeah.
shoot those to make. Of course, the visual effects were amazing in it too.
Yeah, way better than I expected. And
Yeah.
and just balancing in like devastation and loss, right? Like you look at Marvel movies where it's like, well, half the galaxy disappeared, and they're like, we'll never touch on that again. Like this film like interwove all of that in a very
You saw it from the human aspect every single time, pretty much. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I love
I
this
think
movie.
yeah, same. My only complaint was, they do the whole, here's the plan, we're going to take them down, and then this is the other plan, and this is the other plan, and it's like, well, maybe the plan where the main character has a part in it probably is going to end up being what happens. Like there was no tension to the other two plans because you already know.
Well, and I felt like that final plan was like so convoluted that I was like, I don't know that I'm really following, but I'm trusting that this plane is going into his face at some point. You know what I mean? Yeah, it did lose itself a bit there. Yeah. I also really loved the Asian guy with like the Albert Einstein like droopy haircut, like with the big poofy, like whatever that professor guy was. Like he's my hero.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I want that head of hair someday. It's not happening because I'm increasingly losing it.
Yeah. Yep. The fact that he was a super scientist during the war. Then he was on a boat that got rid of mines, and now he's back on a secret. Like what is this career trajectory?
So true. Yeah, all these like decorated, intelligent people just like harpooning fucking bombs out in the middle of the day. Like, oh, yeah, great film. I mean, for anyone who hasn't seen it, I mean, outside of the US, it's probably been available. I guess this was the most pirated movie in the last year because like they held it so tight to Japan that it just like blew up. I'm waiting for like a 4K release of this. I know there is also, I want to watch the original version with subtitles, but I also know that they have the theatrical release of the black and white version. So I'd love to get like a 4K Blu-ray collection of like both versions of the film. Yeah, I could totally see like this did not need to be in color. It was like so drab anyway. I think it would add like an extra layer of nostalgia.
Yeah, the color. I definitely want to see it in black and white too. My wife did not like it. I don't understand. Like I went through all the points. I had like a talking list about this because it doesn't make any sense. Because to me, a woman who really likes like grounded like family dramas, right? This is the movie for that.
Yeah, well, it's very much a women save the day sort of film too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess I didn't ask my wife what her final thoughts were, but she sat through the whole thing and seemed engaged. So
yeah.
But I mean, I also make her watch Svengoolie, and the lead into this was The Tingler with Vincent Price. So compared to that, this is probably riveting.
Her favorite Godzilla is the Matthew Broderick one, which we watched recently, and that one is terrible.
No.
And she
You
will fight for that one over this one.
you only watch that one for
100%. And
the Green Day Brain Stew remix and the Silverchair exclusive soundtrack song.
yeah.
That is it.
The thing that I noticed in that rewatching it, how many of them are Simpson voice actors? There's like 3 different Simpson voice actors that are just being movie actors. And it's like, wow, you don't see those guys around.
And what's weird is that one spawned a legitimately good cartoon show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's an awful
couple
movie.
Good games.
That was one of those movies where they're like, we watch Independence Day and Jurassic Park, and we can make Godzilla like that.
Yeah. I think it was the same director even.
It's so bad. I hate that one so much.
Yep. -1. That's the one to watch.
That is the one. Well, Byron Burn time.
Mm-hmm. This will go quick.
Yeah. So this episode, welcome back to Byron Burn, the segment of the podcast where we play a given game for a random system. This time out, Alleyway on the original Game Boy, and we play these games and we give our opinion as to whether we would buy, rent, or burn the game. Alleyway. Have you played Breakout?
Yeah. Exactly. It's not even to like Arkanoid standards. It's Breakout.
Arkanoid introduced power-ups and random elements. This is just Breakout with Mario jumping into a tube.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's funny because it shows that it's like a spaceship. Like, I don't know why all of these Breakout clones are all spaceships and space themed. Especially when you name it Alleyway, you think of it's like, oh, it's like in the alley, the walls of an alley, and you're hitting blocks, which makes sense. But no, it's Mario getting into some pill-shaped spaceship, which apparently is not in the Japanese. They had to add the Mario part for.
Oh, really?
The US, yeah.
I didn't know that.
They're like, oh shit, we did the bare minimum. We should at least add Mario.
The thing with me in this game is like it's perfectly serviceable, right? Like this was early age of the Game Boy. It's one of those games that Nintendo smartly put out that understands the limitations of the hardware, but can still deliver a fun gaming experience. It's just that, like you said, they didn't do anything new here. And having played this, I borrowed this from a friend back in the day and played it on the original hardware. It's all kinds of constant motion blur. Like I kind of compare it to the original Super Mario Land, which is a game I love, but everything when you're in motion on that game is a constant like squishiness. And that's what this game has too, which is kind of neat in the sense that like it adds this cool like kind of like blur effect to the ball when you're playing it on original hardware, but it also like really fucks with and distorts the gameplay to some extent. So as much as they tried to box it in and make it appropriate for the limitations of the console, they just kind of overlooked one of the major pitfalls, and that is that the screen and the refresh rate and the resolution are not that tight for a game which focuses on like a 2 to 3 pixel wide thing, which is central to your gameplay, right? And there's no analog control. It's hard left, it's hard right. Yep. Those two things alone cripple what could have. And it's not that it's not competent. It's just it has inherent major flaws.
Yes, for sure. And for me, I don't know if you had this problem, but I had a hard time getting the ball to go in different directions.
Yes.
Either you're hitting it off the very end of the paddle or on the left or right. There was no like finesse to that. It's like if you hit it off the left of the side of the paddle, it's going to go the same direction and the same path.
Yes.
Every single time. Even in older games, when you were at least hit the ball while you were still moving, you gained an extra little bit to the path, and it didn't seem like this was the case. It just calculated where it hit on the paddle.
Yeah, and I wonder if that was like somewhat of like a safety measure, like they wanted to make sure the hit boxes were large enough. But yeah, like in a game that inevitably ends in a painful chore in eliminating what is like the last three blocks, this
Mm-hmm.
game just exact because I feel like yeah, you get stuck in this rhythm of like no matter what you did, you just hit the same spot 10 times in a row and you're just watching it bounce off the same angles and getting more and more fucking frustrated.
Yep.
Yeah.
I and the one thing I think I legitimately hate about this game, um, getting the ball in breakout or all the clones, getting the ball up on top above all the other
Yeah.
blocks and seeing it bounce back and forth. That's a Hall of Fame like feeling in video games.
But not in this
That's
game.
no, they punish you. They say, "Oh, you made it up there already. We're gonna make your paddle like half the size now. So good luck with that." And boy, that is such a buzzkill. How do you take one of the greatest feelings in all of video games and then
Yeah.
punish somebody for it?
Well, then like the one innovation they made, aside from like occasionally throwing like a Mario themed like brick tile layout, was like we'll horizontally scroll the puzzle. It's like that added nothing. Like you what the fuck? Like and then like
Yep.
I would imagine on original hardware even more blur. I don't recall that. I distinctly remember the ball, but it's like if that's the one innovation besides Mario jumping into a tube that you brought to the table, you missed the point. You know what I mean?
Well, and then some of those levels, it was like, oh, you didn't get them. You didn't clear all the blocks in time, so we're going to start adding more rows of blocks on the top
Yeah.
and keep pushing more rows. That's not fun. There's nothing fun about that. And I don't think you can be skilled enough to really get those last few blocks. Those last few blocks are pretty much just up to luck because
100%.
there's very few finesse to the angles in this game.
Yeah. And that I mean to me that's all to say this is a incredibly competent and arguably enjoyable game. But when compared to every other iteration that our generation played of this game growing up, this is the most bare bones, frustrating. I would rather play the Atari 2600 version of like
Mm-hmm. Oh, yep.
Breakout or whatever this is. You know what I mean? Like, and Arkanoid had already done it so much better on the NES, even without the Valve's controller. I just, you know, I don't know.
It's wild that they put this out. Yeah, you think about that early Game Boy, and it's like you got Tetris, and then you got Alleyway. Like, how did those two coexist at the same time? How do you have innovation to that degree, and then just dump out this thing?
When you think about too, what made Tetris popular, like that unforgettable, permanently ingrained, no matter which track you picked, soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And this had like the most
Yep.
fucking lack, and you know, and then just the constant bink bonk, you know, like the ball sound effect, like just if the gameplay can't be overly engaging, at least make the sound design overly engaging, and they failed to do either.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I don't hate this game, but in revisiting it, I was just like, boy, that was a point in place, a point in time thing. I think I regarded this much higher than I probably should have. And it,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, I borrowed it from a friend. It was never in my collection. It was like a long weekend swap thing. So that was probably a lot to do with it. But
Yeah. I mean, it's a good fit for the Game Boy,
yeah,
if you're just doing a couple minutes here and there, 5 minutes or whatever. I don't think there was a password or save or anything, right? Like
I don't
there's
think
no,
so. Not that I'm aware
there
of.
might be a level skip password or something like that, but I don't know.
Well, what do you give it on the Byron Burn scale then?
I hate this game. I'm burning it. it's, I cannot believe that it's so bare bones, and then they made it worse by like screwing you over. The one thing that they added to the game was that there's nothing else that changed
Right.
other than it made your paddle half the size if you made it to the top. There's no power-ups. There's no way to make it, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm kind of baffled that this is what they put out. So yeah, I'm going to give it a burn.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to feel bad about it then either. I'm also going to burn this. In the context of the hardware, the time it was released and everything, you could probably argue for a rent, but in the current landscape with many better options and even like so many better examples on the hardware itself, like yeah, this is a they made something that fit what the handheld was, but they didn't make a memorable, good, or justifiable version of that. It's
yeah. I think I'm more angry now that they put it on Switch Online, as if it's
right.
like this is a thing you should play. This is a Nintendo mainstay.
To be honest, it's one of those games that I forgot about until they were like, it's coming to it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Wasn't it?
Why would you bury this? This is it's embarrassing. I think.
We need a redux.
To be Nintendo.
We need an Alleyway DX reimagined for the Switch.
Yes. Alleyway 99.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, with that, I think that's another episode. And Byron burning the books, wouldn't you say?
That is. You can find us on Twitter, Weekend Rental Podcast, and our email address, weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com. Yeah. What do you think about Breakout? Let us know, because it's better than Alleyway. And Arkanoid is the king of that. But until next time, be kind, rewind.
Bananas.
Nanners.